Hello and welcome to the video. It's an introduction to a DIY seatbelt tensioner that I've recently built and added to my sim rig. I was very interested having heard about it and wondered how or if it would complement my seat mover and how they would feel together. I've read and heard a lot about tensioners and how they add a lot even to static rigs, but was especially intrigued having recently started using motion in the form of my seat mover. So what is an SBT? Well, there's quite a few available on the market at the moment, and Cubic Systems QSBT1 does appear to be one of the most popular. So what do they actually claim to do? Well, they claim to aid the simulation of braking, lateral accelerations, high-speed cornering, wheel locks and traction loss, amongst many other things. That all sounds very good, but then we come to the price. €1,390, and that doesn't include any taxes or duties. Now, if anyone has watched my previous video outlining the DX Winner 2 seat mover from Dynamic X, I'm sure you would have been made aware that I do like a bit of a bargain. And just like that device, there is no way I would spend this sort of money, and certainly not for it to cost more than the seat mover itself. So I want to just point out that this project is absolutely not my own work, and I just want to give a shout out to a couple of people, well, three technically. They are Chad McNeese, Matthew Brittle and Marvin Herbold of MAIRA, or Marvin's Awesome iRacing app fame. So first of all, Chad. I met Chad on a Discord server I joined shortly after getting back into iRacing last year. Some of you may have seen videos related to the Discord from an older gamer's perspective. If not, I urge you to check it out, and here it is. The YouTube channel has some very good videos, informative tutorials and such for both VR headsets and sim racing in general, as well as flying simulations. Around this time, Chad very graciously gave me access to his Google Sheets file, and I'll put a link to that in the description for anyone who wants to view it. But it really is a mine of information, including sim racing hardware and also a complete rundown of iRacing information, button combinations, etc. Having gone backwards and forwards a few times with Chad and him offering some great advice on changes to a few of my original choices, I had a final bill of material list, and happy that I could build it to my spec for around £150 in the UK using eBay and Amazon. I will also put this list in the description or a link to it, and you can view or compare if interested. The descriptions have links to where I bought them from, as I say, either eBay or Amazon. Please do note though that prices will change. So for a quick rundown, 2 of the servo motors, power supply, the Arduino that's used for the software, and with this build, following Chad's advice, it's much better to have the normal board and an expansion shield. So with this, the board just literally sits in, you push it in place, and then there are screws that you can screw wires in rather than worrying about having to solder anything. Power lead for the power supply, just need a couple of block connectors to connect the main wires, a USB lead, a fan, and then lastly the actual harness itself. Now the harness was a bit of a pain for me to decide finally which one to get. There was also talk, and I originally only had a 4-point harness. It did become very clear, however, after speaking to both Chad and Marvin, that really you need the 5 or 6-point. The anchor on the base here keeps everything from riding up on the chest, and is a much more secure and therefore giving much better results. But anyway, that's the full list of parts, which you can see at the time I bought them came out to £152.86. There are some extra miscellaneous items needed: screws, nuts and bolts, and also just some wire to connect the Arduino to the main power block, which is only a very short piece, and then however long you want to connect from the power blocks to the actual power supply. So it depends on where you're going to actually mount this power supply. So while waiting for the parts to arrive, and with the servos coming from China, I knew I had a bit of time to look into the construction side of things. Chad had already shared his 3D print files, so I started on those and then looked at the electronics. Around this time, Marvin from MAIRA then announced that he was designing an SBT also. So I had a look at that one, but quickly realised that it was based on a 4080 profile build and was not going to work for me. Looking at Marvin's version of the seatbelt tensioner, he does give a very good description, all the parts needed, and then also how to construct it. As I say, it is a bigger unit and it's based on the larger profile, so I knew that that wouldn't work for me. So then, looking back at Chad's original design, and most importantly, here it is, the wiring schematic. And looking at the wiring schematic, it is actually very straightforward. Basically, one yellow wire from one servo goes to pin 10, one yellow wire from the other servo goes to pin 9, and then there's a single wire that goes from the ground port to one of the connecting blocks. The red wires from each servo then go to the red block, and the red and the black wire from the fan goes to each corresponding block. Also, the brown from each servo goes to the negative side on the connecting block. Then we have wires coming from the connecting block, positive and negative, and they go to the positive and negative points on the power supply. Now Chad has got a separate inline switch here. I don't use that. I have mine connected to a surge protected power block which I have easy access to. So the power lead coming from the wall socket, or in my case the surge protector, will just come straight in and connect to the power supply. So this is a picture of the SBT completed. Two motors either side, the Arduino board, and you can see the wire connections. One wire from each of the servos into points 9 and 10. A wire going from the ground point to the negative terminal on the power block, and then the corresponding positive and negative leads going to each part of that block terminal, and then wires coming from each of those, positive and negative, which then go straight to the power supply. And then these leads here are going to the main power lead, either into the wall socket or, as I said in my case, the surge protector. From the other side, the unit's complete, and again you can see how quite compact it is, and then the USB lead and the power wires come out through the bottom. USB lead obviously goes into your PC, and then these power wires going to the power supply. From the reverse angle, all that's needed now is to put the cover on, and then a final shot with everything in place, fan at the front which draws all the warm air out, and even though it's quite small, it is very effective. And then finally, here's a shot of the unit in place with the back straps of the harness attached to the arm pulleys on the seatbelt tensioner. So then the final job to do is to upload the software and firmware to the Arduino in order to have the seatbelt tensioner read the telemetry from either iRacing directly or from other games through SimHub. Now, Chad has got some excellent instructions here on his Google Sheets page, although I must admit it did look a little bit daunting. And then for the tensioner app itself, again, an awful lot of options and configuration is available. Rather fortunately, Marvin was also working on his, I believe, in a lot of collaboration with Chad. And when I realised that Marvin had put his instructions up, I decided to go with this one, simply because it just looked slightly easier for a simple man like me. But more importantly, the software was integrated into the MAIRA app, which I use very successfully for its original purpose, which was improved force feedback through the wheel. So easy just to follow along, but it's quite easy. You download the software first of all, connect the Arduino board to your PC, make sure it's communicating, and then you upload a file that is contained within the MAIRA program itself. Once that's done, it should connect to MAIRA app, and then you can start doing all the calibrations and set up as you wish. So once that's done and we open up MAIRA app, there is a section for the seatbelt tensioner. It should say it's connected. If this doesn't stay ticked, then there will be a connection issue. One thing I have found is that if MAIRA is opened before the seatbelt tensioner is turned on and has USB access, often I'll need to shut down MAIRA app and then reload it. I'm not sure if that's just a bug that's still there. I know Marvin was aware of it and was working on it. He has done a lot of updates to this from when it was first originally released, but it has all the normal basics: surge, sway and heave, and quite recently he's also added vibration effects, which is one of the big selling points of the big boys, so to speak, but now has effects for ABS and wheel lock, wheel slip and rumble strips. So very basically, when you go over rumble strips, the seat belts themselves will kind of jiggle a little bit and give you that extra sensation and feedback. So it's not just through the base shakers, for example, and the wheel itself. You also get some feedback from the seat belts. And so some final thoughts then. Do I think it was worth it? I think absolutely yes. It has added another dimension. I think it works extremely well with a seat mover, and I'm sure with full motion as well. From my understanding, motion and certainly a seat mover will give you the initial experience of movement, but the seatbelt tensioner then gives a more sustained feel. So for example, very basically, if you go round the left hand corner, the seat will move to the right. You get that initial feeling of movement, but then the seatbelt tensioner, when configured, will continue that pressure, for example, on the right hand shoulder, so you get the sustained effect of G-force. It is very effective, really does add an extra layer of dimension to the feedback experience, and I think certainly for the cost and for the ease of build, I think it's definitely something that if anyone is interested in and feels they have the very limited skills needed to actually build it, upload the software and then run it with MAIRA or Matthew Brittle's software, which is in Chad's Google Sheets, it's a bit of a no-brainer for me. Much like base shakers now, and certainly motion, I can't imagine running without it. I did actually upload some new firmware to my seat mover quite recently, and I started from scratch, redid a load of settings, and while I was doing that I didn't have the seatbelt tensioner running, and it was very obvious that I was missing something. I guess in a similar vein to if my seat mover wasn't working and I was purely running on wheel feedback and base shaker feedback. So yeah, absolutely positive experience for me. Very grateful to Chad in particular for all his help and advice, for Marvin for making the software side much more easier as well. Yeah, really enjoying it. Good luck to anyone who wants to give it a go.